Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're well. Today I want to look at a watch that's very important to me, the Orient Mako XL. This is the watch that got me into the hobby and pulled me down the rabbit hole, still surprising me nearly 3 years later. Before we start, I just want to take a moment and say that I do think you can be interested in watches and call yourself an enthusiast even if you don't own a watch yet. I spent months researching, reading, watching reviews, or other informative content before I got this watch, and the same goes for my Casio. Obviously, I don't think you can call yourself an expert on watches you haven't tried, and you do learn a lot from owning one. It just shouldn't be the only ticket that grants you permission in this community. That's my take anyways, your opinion may differ. To start, this isn't really a review, so I'll put the specs in the description. However, it is worth noting the 44.5mm diameter and that my wrist is 6.3 inches or roughly 16 centimeters. Anyway, I think I've owned it long enough to prove both to you and myself that I love it, and also to make me biased. That said, I'm not blind to its flaws and drawbacks, I just like the Mako enough to overlook them. It's fairly old. 2004 was the original Mako, and the XL followed soon after, I believe. So, numerous successors offer better specs and sizing for the money. This I then suppose is a commentary on my appreciation of it, including some of the areas it could improve on, but mostly why it's special to me and how it makes me feel. It began in late 2019. Ever since I opened the box, it has given off an essence, a longing for adventure. It made me want to get out and explore in much the same way a camera can. With a camera, I take joy in the careful framing and minor adjustments before I press the shutter. With this, I simply look at my wrist and I'm in awe, seeing it catch the light in a slightly different way to the day before. My point is not that I'd want a watch over a camera, but rather, by looking at it, I want to throw it on and go somewhere. It symbolises adventure, a companion that has been to many places with me in the past, and will also be there in the future. For this reason, I rarely look at it as an object. Instead, I feel as if the parts which make it maybe less of a tool watch, such as the polishing, or the applied instead of painted indices, give it a personality. Whereas the Casio feels like it's all about the function. Even if the Casio was automatic, it would feel like a tool for a specific purpose. The difference is that it's the combination of merits and faults which give it a unique character. You may dismiss it as it hasn't got modern specs and it is quite large, amongst other things, but that's for you to decide. You'll compare it to your ideals and criteria and it may or may not work for you. It's also a reflection of my individuality. It feels like my watch. I chose it out of all of the other options, some with superior specifications and smaller sizing. I wanted it to be unique, not the Ray or Mako that nearly everyone recommends. And in hindsight, I'd do it again. If someone compliments it, I feel as if it's a compliment of my taste as well. Now don't get me wrong, I don't need other people's kind words to make me like it. I'm thoroughly delighted with it. The Mako is good enough for me to take pretty much anywhere. Ironically, not in the water. Changing from the bracelet to a brown leather strap or to a NATO gives it an entirely new persona, heightened when switching for different occasions. When out for a walk, at a desk, or anywhere in between, I simply roll my wrist and once again am captivated by the deep, rich blue dial. The text on the bezel and the edges of the indices glisten under the light. This is probably the Mako's greatest strength, how it looks under different lighting conditions. Most cloudy and overcast days, the dial, bezel and bracelet are matte, but when it's indoors or sunny, it shines. Every polished facet becomes more pronounced and contrasts so well with the darker parts. The weight and the quality are very much to my liking, and done to a possibly higher degree than one would expect at this price point. It doesn't have hacking, manual winding, or a sapphire crystal, which may be deal breakers for many if even one of those is missing. But personally, it's never really bothered me. I use it to get a gauge of the time and don't mind if it's maybe 10, 15 seconds off. That said, if I do try and set the seconds more precisely, I found it to be surprisingly accurate. Moreover, due to it being a dive watch, the dial is clear and legible. Who would have thought? The day date is framed and a welcomed practical addition that doesn't clutter the dial. The biggest drawback for me is the water resistance. It's 200 meters, but I've never been comfortable enough to take it into the water. I feel as though even if I got it pressure tested and it all checked out, I wouldn't trust it to stay that way for very long, as it's probably not what it was designed for. I'm not sure if I'd swim with it, and certainly not take it diving. It's more for in case. Peace of mind, I suppose, and some sentimentality. It's just not a beater for me. If I had an ISO rated dive watch, I'd still probably take it off when swimming. I'd only swim with a G-Shock, not just because of the water resistance, but the cost. I guess that shows that I'm the problem here, another watch guy who worries way too much about one part of the watch that normal, non-enthusiasts never think of. That being said, between the sky and the coast, the places I tend to frequent most, it's been a pleasure. I'm slowly coming to terms with the fact that it isn't suited for swimming, and that's fine. I must accept that. I'd get another watch if I needed a watch specifically for that. That aside, I enjoy it in the vast majority of scenarios. The Mako not only looks, but functions beautifully here. I guess I found it's not about the individual areas of the watch that really matter, at least not to me. Rather, it's the accumulation of these areas that make the entire watch what it is. I couldn't care less about the lack of hacking because I'm still so taken aback by the dial, sword hands, lollipop seconds hand, and the date changing button that makes me think of a helium escape valve. I have my Casio for grab and go, for greater accuracy, and for when I feel a different way. The Mako XL offers me things that the Casio doesn't, and vice versa. That's okay. It isn't perfect on paper, or in real life, but I'm willing to put that aside because of how it makes me want to discover new places, and ultimately, how I feel when I wear it. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this and your own watch stories down below. Thanks for watching. Talk soon.